Well, hello everyone. Welcome. I'm glad everybody has been able to break away of all the festivities and start your evening off right here at the Wein Jazz and Heritage Center. So we are here for the second Allison Miner Series, which was a program that the archive developed to highlight the research done, with our collections. I'm Rachel Lyons. I'm the archivist for the Jazz and Heritage Foundation. I've been working with the foundation for nearly 25 years, and I'm so happy to see some familiar faces, some new faces, and of course, some of our Colombian friends here to celebrate with us. Just a point of note about Allison Miner, for whom this series was named. She's one of the founders of the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. She is also the founder of the Jazz and Heritage Archive. In 1990, she started the Music Heritage stage at the Jazz Fest and began recording those panels, which now number over 1,000 in our collection. At that time, she was keenly aware that our history was dispersed and was at risk of being lost. Her work collecting for the archive helped to enrich the 25th Jazz Fest, which is very big. It was our first big cultural exchange with the Bahamas, actually. And that was in 1994, just prior to her untimely passing at the age of 46. The foundation is celebrating Allison this evening and her enduring contributions to Louisiana and to the New Orleans community. Since 2015, the archive has been awarding research fellowships to community as well as academic researchers. Tonight, we are so pleased to highlight the work of Manuel Sevilla. Manuel was one of our inaugural fellows in 2015. Manuel's work with the Petronio Alvarez Festival in Cali, Colombia, and his work as an anthropologist studying music and heritage made his application a standout. 9 years later, Manuel joins us as a part of Jazz Fest Cultural Exchange, a Colombian celebration that is bigger than ever thanks to the support of Expedia. Before we welcome Manuel, I would like everybody to silence your cell phones, please. And with that, Manuel Sevilla.
Just to keep track of my time, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I know all of you expected to have wonderful music in the afternoon and then come to a lecture, so I'm glad it came true. Buenas tardes a todas las personas que están acá. Gracias por tomarse el tiempo de venir. I'll do my presentation in English and every now and then in Spanish as well, because we have some musicians and craft people that are here, so I'd like them to get some of this stuff as well. The talk today is called These Drums of Ours, Experiencing Cultural Heritage in Two Music Festivals, New Orleans and Cali. When talking about the title, like an hour ago at an interview, in a WWOZ, they asked me about the title, how it came up to be. And I told them that actually, to give full credit, it was suggested by a Californian, a 50-year-old man, very good friend of mine, who lives in Cali, Colombia, and who just realized that when he turned 50, that he had spent half of his life in Cali. He got there being a 25-year-old man. And he said, he actually was the translator of a book that we're publishing today. And he said, I've come to understand that this book, which is about our festival, Petronio Alvarez, those drums also belong to me. Being a Californian man, those drums here in Cali, Colombia, belong to me as well. And I think that summarizes the idea of heritage. So that's the reason of the title. Also, another note, most pictures, or all pictures that you will find here about our festival were taken by Colombian photographer Carlos Miguel Barona. So I'm happy to share that work with you as well. And also, the festival that I'm going to be talking about, most of you are familiar with Jazz Fest, of course. Little of you are familiar with Petronio Alvarez. It's a festival we hold in the city of Cali, Colombia since 1997. I'll talk a bit about it later on. And it brings a lot of things together: music, food, drinks, dancing, and a spiritual connection with the environment. So to begin this talk, I thought it'll be interesting for you to listen to the voice of this woman. She's called Lida Vente. She's a migrant from the Pacific coast, and she's a cook. She knows about healing with herbs, and she's a wonderful singer. So for you, this is just a minute of Lida Vente. If we could play the song, please.
Mi vecina hizo un yuyo y a la mesa me invitó. Ay, qué yuyo tan sabroso que hasta el hambre me quitó. Y hoy Cleme, estoy comida de yuyo. Y hoy Cleme, revuelto con arroz. Hoy Cleme, me digo una coteña. Hoy Cleme, quiero yuyo pa' comer. Hoy Cleme, le contestó San José. Hoy Cleme, en cote o en chete, estoy comida de yuyo, revuelto con arroz. Estoy comida de yuyo, revuelto con arroz, revuelto, revuelto con arroz, revuelto, revuelto.
Thank you. It's a song about my neighbor who just cooked rice with some herbs, and they shared about the rice. So that was Lida Vente. I would also like to thank all the institutions that made my presence here possible today. Of course, the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation, who in 2015 granted me the possibility of being here for a month. And as Rachel Lyon said, I cycle around the city for a whole month learning about New Orleans and Jazz Fest as well. Also Jonathan Solari, who has been kind enough to show me around and to make this possible together with Rachel and all of their staff. The University of New Orleans Press and my fellow editor, Abram, with whom we made possible the edition of this book, which is being launched today here, which is the translation of a guide to our festival. So thank you again for making that possible. Secretaría de Cultura de Cali, Colombia, who since 2008 has been supporting research on the festival, and Agdivoca, and their programs in Colombia, Luis Sevillano, who kindly funded and supported this initiative as well. So thank you, all of you, for making that possible. Ideas I'm going to be sharing with you, first of all, the notion of cultural heritage. Secondly, the connection between cultural heritage and music festivals. Thirdly, going deep into the talk, Petronio and Jazz Fest, a comparative look at both of them. And finally, what we see as challenges and chances and opportunities to face those challenges. When people knew that I was coming to New Orleans, they said, "You're going to Jazz Fest." Yeah, I was coming to Jazz Fest, but I always try to make a point that it has a middle name, which is Jazz and Heritage Festival. and people tend to forget that. So since I have no problem with jazz, of course I love it, but we're going to put the accent today on the heritage part of the whole concept, which I believe is the connection, the first one that we can establish with Petronio Alvarez. And I would like you to take 30 seconds, maybe 40. When you hear the word heritage, does it ring a bell? And what does it remind you of? Your own heritage. Entonces, cuando usted escucha patrimonio, ¿a qué le suena? Y tómese 30 segundos para pensar cuál es su patrimonio. What's your own heritage? Tends to be very much discussed. It's a buzzword nowadays. UNESCO has a World Heritage List. Most of our countries have a national list of heritage, and we every now and then struggle to see who gets inscribed into the list of national heritage, and we wonder what happens to those that don't get inscribed into it. So today we're going to be talking about that, cultural heritage. Any ideas? What did it remind you of when you think about heritage? Anything that came up to your mind? Family.
Your place and space of where you come from.
Okay. ¿Alguien más sobre patrimonio? ¿Qué pensó cuando dijimos eso? Inheritance. Okay. Lo nuestro. What's ours? Okay. So if you see in there's a common feeling of, on the one hand, belonging, but also something that we value highly. Not to dwell into technical terms, but if you think about everything that you consider heritage, you could think about either objects, places, be them natural or be them built by people, or the combination, practices as well, and systems of ideas. For instance, music, which comprises repertoire, how you play an instrument, it all comprises things. So that's everything, all those elements could be heritage. But the key thing here is that someone, somewhere, a community considers that as valuable. So this brings the whole thing about heritage back to people. And back to something that I want to emphasize on, which is the social relationship around it. So heritage becomes important because of the social relationships that are built around it. Lo importante del patrimonio es la gente que se conecta con él, las relaciones humanas que se constituyen. And from that perspective, I would like to pitch an idea, first one here, which is that musical cultures and musical communities are the ideal place to see how heritage is valued by several communities. So think of any musical community you are part of or you are close to, and you will see that there are objects, places, practices, systems of ideas, and relationships built around that. Any musical community, be it the jazz community, the blues community, la comunidad de la chirimía, la comunidad de la marimba, whatever, you have people there around all of that. So if you want to think about heritage, well, let's look at a musical community. So that was the first idea I wanted to pitch here, which is taking me to the second. If you want to dwell into cultural heritage and into a musical community, go to a festival. That's the place to be. Now, as we were talking like an hour ago, you have the festival, which begins one day, ends the other one, and then the year goes around. What's interesting is that the festival brings up or summarizes all that, but if you are off festival, things keep going on. And that's something that I'd like to call my attention upon to you. And I'm going to be comparing how that experience of festivals take place in two specific festivals. One, the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, And on purpose, I decided to take the whole logo of the foundation because it goes all year round. It's not only Jazz Fest, but a lot of things happening all year round. And the other festival we're going to be talking about is Festival de Música El Pacífico Petronio Álvarez, which takes place in Cali. Now, interestingly enough, when we designed the logo for Petronio Álvarez, we were not thinking about Jazz Fest, but they look like. So you see the people doing what people do at festivals. That's what I'm going to be talking about. Now, when we compare festivals, we could think of multiple ways of finding common grounds. On the one hand, we could be thinking about the founders, the people who had the original idea to put up a festival. So we could think about Mr. Wein and all his effort, or we could think about Mr. Germán Patiño on your, would it be your left side, who came up with the idea for Petronio Álvarez. What were the political moments when those happened, what challenges they faced, what was the original vision, and how it's coming up today. That's one way if you want to go, some ideas if you want to write something, or the next grant for the archive program. We could also think about the role of women that they have played in festivals, be it as performers or be it as producers. Today at the fairgrounds, we were talking with some of the producers, and Valerie Gillette said, this festival is mostly, held on the shoulders of women. And we said, yeah, well, you can tell. It works perfectly. Similar things happens with Petronio Álvarez, que es producido por mujeres y funciona. You have Mahalia Jackson, we have Inés Granja, who's also a wonderful performer, who's the composer of the main song of the festival. And many people who go into the Petronio Festival don't know that the song they're singing and dancing to was composed by Inés Granja. So that's another line of work. Or also, if you wanted to go beyond, you could think about iconic musicians. Musicians who were doing their thing, and then the festival allowed them to shine and to become, major figures of the whole process. So you have Professor Longhair, que es una figura muy... es una figura muy importante para el Festival de Jazz y era un pianista fundamental acá. Or we have Gualajo, who also was a marimba player and was kind of on the side of things until Festival Petronio Álvarez came up. So those are all lines you could follow. I want to concentrate in this idea of how we experience cultural heritage in a festival. And the second idea I want to pitch to you is, when you go into a festival, you can experience cultural heritage from along a continuum. On the one hand, you embody the festival. On the other hand of the continuum, on the other side of the continuum, you talk about the festival, which is what we're doing now. What I want to do in the next minutes is to share with you some common grounds on how we experience festival, either by embodying it, or by talking it, or by combining things together. That, by the way, is in Petronio Álvarez, and I've just realized we have a common umbrella as well. La sombrilla también es un punto común que tenemos entre los dos festivales. So to begin on the embodiment side of the continuum, let's talk about concerts, which can be as large as what you have in the Acura stage. Where are the Stones be playing tomorrow? Which stage? Okay. It's going to be huge tomorrow. Or you could have, a smaller version like the one we have in Petronio Álvarez, which I just came to realize 50,000 people a night is not that small, right? It's huge for our standards, and takes time and effort to produce it. Now, what's the thing about concerts, and how do we experience heritage in concerts? We dance to it, we sing to it, and we come close to people. So you actually embody heritage. Do we learn how to dance before going to the festival, or do we learn to dance within the festival? That's a good question. But that may be the clearest example of how we embody a festival. We listen to the music, we dance to it. If we keep moving to the other side of the continuum, right to the middle, there's another common experience between, or common ground between these two festivals: attire, garment, and hairdos. La ropa que usted se pone para el festival, los adornos que utiliza, los peinados. Little I know about hairdos, but I look at them. And going through the number of pictures that we have of Petronio Alvarez, I realized this woman could also be here in Jazz Fest. You could very well find her somewhere here. The interesting thing about attire, garment, and hairdos is that you put your body through the experience of changing yourself temporarily, be it by wearing a necklace, be it by deciding to wear even a t-shirt, or that special shirt you have for festival season. I know I have one. And interestingly enough, if we look at it from an anthropological perspective, is the opportunity to dress up as someone else. And hair has a lot to do with it. Interestingly enough, this picture was taken back in 2016 when I had the chance to be in Jazz Fest for the first time. So you see the young lady getting her braids probably, and this was taken 5 years ago in Petronio Alvarez. Many of those pictures could go back and forth and you wouldn't know where they took place. So you have the hair pieces, you have the hairdos. And in Cali, Colombia, this particular experience with hair for women has become very, very significant. Be it for Black Colombian women who, after Petronio Alvarez, and I would say in the last 10 years, have become very conscious of the relevance of their hair and the political meaning that it has. And Petronio has added to that. But also for mestizo women and white women who explored that possibility and have come to understand the meaning that it has for mostly migrant Black women who moved to Cali. And Petronio has been instrumental to put that conversation out. It lasts 5 days, but the conversation keeps going on for the rest of the year. So there we have another common ground. La importancia que ha dado Petronio para que muchas mujeres puedan reconocer la relevancia de su pelo y para que muchas mujeres que no son afro puedan entender que ahí también hay unos mensajes andando, y eso lo ha permitido el festival. Maybe, going back to this, we could say that food and drinks would be on the left side of the continuum, more towards the embodiment of heritage. And to a certain extent it does. But also, you're not only eating, but you get some discourse about what you're eating. It becomes meaningful. It has a story. It has something behind it. So yes, you have your drink. Yes, you have your food. I was surprised to see in the Twitter or X account of the festival how much relevance they give to this, which after so and so years came back to the festival. So food has a story in here. People go there expecting to have something in particular and enjoy it. Well, the same thing happens in Petronio Alvarez. With food, of course, a lot of women who travel from the Pacific coast to the festival to cook there for people who have never tried that. And also the issue of drinks. So we have handmade drinks, artisanal drinks that not only have their I would say, alcoholically related effect in terms of bringing joy to people, but also they are deeply related with a whole set of ideas. Remember when we were talking about heritage, that ideas were also part of it. So this is deeply connected with a whole set of ideas about your health. So what you see in this picture is a group of women from Asoparupa, mostly the two on your right side of the screen, who are also doulas. Is that the name you gave, right? They are doulas. And son parteras. And the drinks that they have in there are drinks that are specially prepared for women who are not only about to give birth, but the whole process of pregnancy. When you go to the festival and they give you the drink, they tell you the story. So you are not only drinking biche or curao, you are drinking the whole story. And a lot of people are starting to realize the value of what's going on in there. So again, just like in Jazz Fest, you don't only go and ingest something, you go and relive your heritage while in there. Whoops. And then we have the crafts, which also are in the middle ground of embodiment, if you want to wear them or use them, but also these chords become important. The story behind the craft is also important. When you give a gift, a craft as a gift, or when you decide to hang a poster on your wall, it has a story and it was printed by somebody. And of course, as crafts have story, I'll tell you this one in particular. La historia de esta foto en particular. We took this picture at the workshop of a man who's here tonight and who's going to be in a Jazz Fest for the next couple of days. He builds instruments out of wood. And when we went to his workshop, I particularly am interested in tools. Since I'm not very good at using them, I'm good at taking pictures of them. And I was puzzled by this one in particular. So I went to the owner and I said, Maestro Ado, what about this? What about this? And he said, well, this is a machete. He said, yeah, when things turn hard, we use machetes until the point that they become scalpels. Well, talking about, recycling things. So crafts have a story. The people who make things, the tools they use, and I think that's common ground also. Because kilt making has a story. So yes, you get the kilt, but yes, you want to know who made it, what's behind it. So you go to the craft people and you listen to it. So again, it's in the middle ground of experiencing heritage either through your body or through the story that comes with it, or both things. And in our case, building instruments also has quite a profound meaning. Because in our festival, like in yours, what we have is people making instruments right there, telling you the story and explaining the connection they may have with the environment, for instance. And nowadays, especially people who work with animal hides or with wood, need to find alternative ways to produce their instruments. And we were just talking about how eventually the idea of conservation of heritage poses a challenge in the sense, be it building instruments or composing music, you are in the tension between maintaining things as they were, but also facing the new moment and the new times. How do you solve that? And when we were talking with this man, he said, well, heritage needs to be flexible. So certain animal hides are now, we can use them, they are protected. And certain wood needs more time to be grown. So we need to move forward and find alternative ways to do that, which I particularly, well, there may be some purists who say, that's not the same thing. I would say that's how things are. And heritage should be moving. From my perspective, the only culture and the only heritage that is not moving is the one that is dead or in a museum. So we better have heritage moving and evolving. Entonces quería decir, maestro Ado, que si no se pueden utilizar las pieles y las maderas, toca buscar otras. Which takes me to the other extreme, and maestro Ado, if you could stand up, please, si se puede parar un momento, por favor. And he's the man who makes scalpels out of machetes, out of using them. And he's the man who built this. This is called a guasa. It's a rattle instrument made out of wood with seats inside. He made it. And the reason I bring it is because on the other side of the spectrum, when we have talks and exhibitions, we also embody some of this. So we come to these places to try and find some of the words that give us the meaning that the dancing, the singing, the eating, the drinking may have. So as you can see, it goes back and forth. Talks and exhibitions have been very important for Petronio Alvarez, when I would say 15 years ago, we managed to have something like the Allison Miner stage, which is when you bring musicians to explain what they do, to interview them, and to build memory. But also, when you keep things for generations to come. And all credit goes here to the archivist. So, I'm sad to say that in many of our festivals, the work around memory and archiving is very weak, and that's something we could learn from you guys. And in here, it has been amazing to find the enormous work that they do at the archive, at the New Orleans Historical Collection. Every place, the work around memory is pretty relevant. So when you go out and see the pictures, those are from the archive. When you go to the fairgrounds tomorrow, or the day after, you'll see those pictures. Someone took them, someone digitized them, someone coded them, and someone has them in there to go back to them. And that's relevant. Particularly, I'm interested in posters. So you have the poster from Jazz Fest 1978, and you have the poster from Petronio Alvarez 1998, I'm sorry. It was interesting to see at those days how anonymity was a key. So you don't know who those musicians are. You see the instruments, you see the setting. Now if you look at today's posters, they have names, faces, people you recognize. So there's a whole, and it's only possible because someone took care of that. Just to wrap up and to open some time for Q&A, challenges and chances that I believe we have. On the one hand, we need to communicate as a festival the extended process. Many of you may not know what goes on after the festival is wrapped up. Muchos no sabemos lo que pasa cuando termina el festival. Y pasan muchas cosas. Eso toca comunicarlo. So a lot of programs going after Jazz Fest wraps up. And a lot of things go on off the main stage of Petronio Alvarez, where you have schools, where you have people being aided in multiple areas of their life. And at times, we at festivals believe that that could be communicated better, perhaps. And people could learn about that and see what they are helping make possible. So that's one challenge we have. There's also a tension between heritage and commerce. And Ana Maria may resonate with this, but we academics tend to be very critical of this, keep things apart. But when you talk to musicians, they don't keep things apart. You can do both. And I took this picture the other day at the House of Blues, and I was interested to see how artists who play at the festival can also play somewhere else. And there's a whole scene going on. That's something we at Petronio Alvarez could learn about. And I was surprised to see also that in our festival, things are happening. So what you have in there, this is Jason from Rancho Aparte, who was generous enough to let me take his picture. And what you have in there, and that's something that Jonathan and I were asking about, what you see in there, Viche del Chocó, is a craft drink that they make in the department of Chocó. So that's a brand of artisanal drink that are sponsoring their trip to New Orleans. So things are happening. You don't need to keep them apart necessarily. Just focus them. And finally, another challenge that we have is how to put institutions together to work around and with festivals. And this picture was taken yesterday at Loyola University, where Rancho Aparte, a group from Colombia who played last weekend in Jazz Fest, got together with some musicians from New Orleans and recorded a song. Una o dos canciones, maestro. ¿Cuántas grabaron? 4 songs they recorded. I just went to the first one. They're being produced now. You'll listen to them hopefully soon, so it's possible. So another challenge we have, which at the same time is an opportunity, I would say, is to have institutions working together, whichever they are. So these are the ideas I wanted to share with you. I was honored to be here today, and now for some Q&A, I would like to invite 2 people who came from Colombia to be here today. And they know the festival from inside as well. One of them is Lady Hidio, the Secretary of Culture of the city on Cali. Just arrived into her office, but she's been around the festival for at least 15 years. And also Luis Sevillano, who ran the festival for a couple of years and is responsible of many of what we have now. So I'd like to ask them to come here with me to get some of your questions. And thank you very much for your kind attention. So is there a microphone for questions, or people just? Okay, so if anyone has a question, this is it.
Sí.
In that case, I'll take the chance that I have Lady in Luis Alberto here. And just to get things going, if you could tell us from your perspective, common grounds that we may find between New Orleans and Cali. Let's leave aside festivals for a minute and what common elements you may find between Cali and New Orleans that have caught your attention, que les llama la atención de puntos comunes entre Nueva Orleans y Cali, y después hablamos de festivales.
Bueno, buenas tardes. Para mí es la primera vez en New Orleans y la similitud con Cali ha sido muy interesante, diferente de la arquitectura del espacio. No sé si.
First time in New Orleans, many things are different, like architecture and the areas, but, and here comes what she finds in common ground.
Sin embargo, ahorita que hacías la presentación, encontrar esos patrones comunes es muy interesante dentro de una diáspora, una afrodiáspora, que lo conversábamos además, que hace poco estuve en Costa de Marfil y que desde ahí los dos festivales tienen algo muy particular y las personas que hemos estado allí estamos todo el tiempo cubriendo que no se pierda esa magia y esa esencia y que lo vemos en las imágenes, en los afiches y en los procesos que los dos con diferencias de tiempo de inicio se marca constantemente.
So she was surprised to find the common cultural patterns that you may have in Cali and in New Orleans as well. She was just in Ivory Coast working with a festival as well, and they realized the role that festivals play in terms of the conservation of the African diaspora and the relevance of that diaspora in the configuration of contemporary cities.
Y que definitivamente es ese sabor que no solamente es lo musical, sino lo gastronómico, en nuestro caso la cocina, comienzan a entenderse desde una cultura y desde unos patrones de lo que somos cotidianamente. Y que desde ahí estas plataformas nos hacen reivindicar la importancia de una población y de lo que contribuyen a una ciudad, en nuestro caso, al distrito de Santiago de Cali.
So that common cultural pattern and the impact of the African diaspora is not only to be appreciated in the musical areas, but also in the culinary areas, in some other areas of daily life, not only in the festival stage, and that some of the work that we need to do is to keep working in the conservation of that and how it was central to the way our cities look nowadays. Luis.
Okay. The first, I don't have good English, I apologize for that. For the reason I help my big friend, the titular professor Manuel Sevilla, for translate all the say. But only say in English is the Cali is New Orleans in USA. I think that the Cali is New Orleans in USA in all topic in the food, in the smile, in the different person, in the music, in the I don't know, the happiness in general. Yeah. Suficiente inglés para mí. Voy a español.
He was doing pretty good, I would say. You got that.
I have nervous. It's really. No, creo que definitivamente la conexión, digamos, de las personas afrodescendientes entre New Orleans y Cali hace que los dos festivales sean muy similares. Creo al final, y pensando desde el desarrollo, que la cultura de las personas afrodescendientes, tanto en Cali como en New Orleans, hace posible estas ciudades.
So he is convinced that it is the impact of the African diaspora and it is the impact of the African descent that made possible what we find in both cities, Cali and New Orleans.
Para Cali, la cultura de las personas afrodescendientes no solamente pone un ingrediente en el patrimonio cultural de la ciudad, sino que pone un ingrediente en cómo se vive la ciudad y cómo se ve la ciudad en un futuro. Y el Petronio Álvarez y el Festival de Jazz logran conjugar las dos cosas, logran unir las dos cosas. Creo que es difícil, solo por las magnitudes es difícil notar en dónde está uno. Ambos tienen una gran apuesta desde el patrimonio de las personas afrodescendientes para expresar lo que toda una ciudad siente, vive y quiere, digamos, alcanzar.
So not only is that cultural influence of the whole community of African descent in both cities, but also if we're thinking forward in terms of development and in terms of the changes that need to be made in each city, it is there where Luis believes we should be looking at.
Finalizo diciendo que la cultura de las personas afrodescendientes en ambas ciudades hace posible encontrar en el marco de la amistad, del amor y de la colectividad un propósito de futuro.
So, be it with Afro-Colombians or with African Americans, he's convinced that in there, friendship and love and solidarity will make possible whatever changes we want to make in our cities. Thank you. So we have 3 minutes to go. Oh, there's a question here.
Thank you. So this is the book. Everybody, see if you can get it. I've already read it. And one thing that I had a question about, because you mentioned people wanting to make money, that in the early days, people did not want to get recorded because they were afraid they were not going to be able to make money in live performances. Now, have you been able to convince and support people to make recordings, to earn money, and also to record their music for the archive?
Dolores nos pregunta, for the Spanish-speaking people, nos pregunta que en el libro decimos que al principio los músicos tradicionales no querían grabar porque si grababan no los iban a contratar para presentaciones en vivo y quiere saber cómo estamos en eso en ese momento. From my experience, I would say some of them have decided to get recorded because they realize it's a way for people to know them. And they have also come to realize that even if you just play the recording, there's a lot more going on together with the music that can be captured in a record. So they are more flexible now, and they see as an option that, I don't know, in your case, how do you see people in terms of recording?
Además de lo que mencionas, a mí me parece importante entender como toda la ruta de lo que es también la música en el mercado y cómo esto también ha permitido cambiar ese paradigma o esa forma de pensar y a su vez entender que son múltiples escenarios los que tienen que tener los artistas ya pensando en esas cadenas de valor, industrias culturales y creativas.
So in terms of cultural industries, luckily, many of these artists have come to realize that there are multiple possibilities where they can even be performed on live sessions, but also have their music distributed. So there's a whole array of things to be done there. And if I'm allowed to say that, Dolores, I think one of the things that New Orleans teaches us is that there's not only one way to have your music go out. So we do need a combination of venues, radio stations, festivals, people who want to listen that in multiple possibilities. So I guess we have time for that last question. Thank you.
Okay, buenas tardes.
Buenas
Y
tardes.
gracias por venir y por haber hecho posible esto. Una pregunta, yo llevo 12 años fuera del país y yo no había oído en Colombia del petróleo. Yo empecé a oír del petróleo ya cuando estaba afuera y no tenía mucho la posibilidad de ir. Y ¿cómo ustedes están haciendo esta promoción fuera del país, igual dentro? ¿Cómo están? Bueno, dentro creo que obviamente es un poco más fácil con los medios de comunicación y sabiendo, pues, teniendo una identidad cultural como se está desarrollando en Colombia, cómo se está fortaleciendo cada vez más. Afuera, ¿cómo está haciendo esa promoción de esta clase de festivales tan importantes que representan no solo para los que están adentro, sino más que todo, bueno, digo porque estoy afuera y hacer parte de estas dinámicas me llena de mucha satisfacción y orgullo y emoción. Entonces, ¿cómo es esa promoción del petróleo de un festival relativamente nuevo para nosotros?
So our fellow guest here, she's been living out, gracias por tu pregunta, she's been living out of the country for 12 years and she wants to know what has been the promotion of the festival abroad, because she assumes that many people know about the festival in Colombia. Not exactly a good assumption because some people inside Colombia are not aware of Petronio Alvarez. But she wants also to know how it's being promoted outside of the country. You may want to get this question.
Sí, y comienzo de atrás para adelante porque es un festival que este año cumple 28 años, que digamos que ha sido muy importante entender de manera orgánica cómo se ha vuelto el festival para mí más importante de la ciudad. Antes era la salsa, la Feria de Cali, y ahorita, y lo iba a decir en la anterior pregunta, esto de verdad es una plataforma que lo que nos reivindicó fue la importancia de la diversidad de ciudad. Te dejo ahí y ya complemento.
So she wants to go the other way around, which is, first of all, we needed to understand the relevance of the festival for the city, and it has been such that a city that used to be known as the capital of salsa in Colombia looked at itself and said, well, here's another heritage that is actually part of what we are now.
Y esa internacionalización se aborda desde esa importancia que va tomando año tras año. Ver un escenario con 150.000 personas hace que ya genere un impacto gigantesco, y a partir de ello se ha hecho unas comunicaciones de forma natural de personas que están por fuera y que asumen ejercicios que le ponen además Festival Petronio Álvarez sin tener el sello, y adicionalmente todo un proceso con Cancillería y con unas intervenciones de gobierno nacional con gobierno local.
So that idea of a festival that changed the face of a city based on if it's Afro-Colombian descent is what's being promoted outside of the country in joint work between the Ministry of Catalina, help me out here. Foreign Affairs, thank you, and some other institutions that make it possible. So I would say the Afro-diaspora connection has become very relevant for the festival.
Y solo complementaría que los mercados musicales nos han permitido que los mismos músicos y agrupaciones también puedan mostrarle al mundo este género tan particular del Pacífico colombiano.
So music markets have become also key places for musicians themselves to communicate what they're doing.
Igualmente, la promoción tanto dentro como fuera. Desde el programa que tengo el honor de dirigir, tenemos por ejemplo la ruta de festivales. Es una ruta que articula al sector privado y a las comunidades para contar del festival.
So there's also a US funded program that works with festivals and that has allowed people to put that forward and to understand what's going on, not only in Petronio, but in also smaller festivals that are highly relevant for their communities.
Y finalmente, la flexibilidad que da el festival permite contarlo de distintos matices, porque el Festival Petronio Álvarez es un festival de festivales, es un festival de comidas, es un festival de bebidas, es un festival de música, es un festival danzario, es un festival de ropas, de vestimentas, de moda, de artesanías. Entonces son muchos festivales en un solo festival que permite que distintos públicos puedan hablar de él.
And just to wrap up, the festival has multiple dimensions, so the possibility, we like to think of it as a festival of festivals, so the possibility of having, as we were saying, food, drinks, attires, garments, allows the festival to be communicated from multiple angles. I know there are more questions, but we need to wrap up because we have a second presentation now. On purpose, I spoke about some elements because I knew that we had musicians in here. So this second presentation, I invite you to stick to it because we're going to have a musical comparison between, is it brass bands in New Orleans? Brass bands and música del Departamento del Chocó, Chirimía music from Colombia. So stick around because we have wonderful people in here. Thank you very much for your attention.